Welcome to Shopware Unplugged, episode 7.
My name is Borys, CEO of Ergonaut and Strix. Strix is an agency, an enterprise partner of Shopware.
My name is Tomas. I'm owner of Shopware e-commerce, enterprise partner in the Netherlands.
Hi, everybody. Today we have a special guest. I think we can start, Justin, with maybe telling us a few words about your story and introducing yourself, who you are, what's your relation, and what do you have to do with Shopware.
Hi, my name is Justin Biddle, and I'm the UK strategy and business development guy for Shopware. And I'm actually the only guy with boots on the ground in the UK, in fact. While we have a four-man UK team, I'm the only one who's actually based in the UK. I've been working with Shopware since about October last year, but I came across them a couple of years ago, I think when an old client of mine was doing a vendor selection process. And I first actually came across them really at the Shopware Community Day last year. And I was blown away by the community and the size of the community. And from then on, actually, it's been a pleasure to get more and more involved. And from January this year, I've been full-time looking at how we can develop the UK market into something approaching the stature of that of Germany.
Sure. I don't know if you remember, but we've met like also a few years ago at one of the Magento events. So if you could maybe say a few words, because you're in the UK in the e-commerce business for quite a long time.
I have been. I think Borys, it was in Vegas, and wasn't it? And I think what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right?
Yes. I think it was Vegas exactly.
Yeah, I've been in e-commerce actually for quite some time. I used to be, when I originally left university, I was a soldier, and when I left the army, I went into the city for a while, and that didn't work out for me. And then the .com boom was happening, and I set up a company called Day Trader, and I sold that just before the .com crash, and got into e-commerce then. But it wasn't e-commerce the way we know it now. It was interactive TV e-commerce. So we were putting retailers on effectively the red button services of video on demand TV platforms. So I did that for quite a few years, working both for the platforms and for the content guys as well, and for the uplink and broadcasters and post-production guys as well. And then I went and did an MBA, and then I went up and set up a consultancy, and that eventually morphed into a Magento e-commerce agency. We set up Magento, a Magento agency based on the premise that open source, sort of mid-market open source software could offered, and it was open. It was not a proprietary network. It meant that in 2009 we could walk into some pretty big offices, me and my business partner, and say, you know what, guys, we're the low-risk option here, because if these proprietary networks go bust, good luck with your business. But take this to the next agency or the next agency, and they can all work on this because it's all completely open source. So around that agency, it's called Flint Technology in the UK. We used to build sort of obviously retailer front-end builds, but we specialized in integrations, and we built integration plugins to things like Brightpearl, Verifone payment gateways, Shuttle, the Filter, a whole bunch of ERP platforms as well, like Prima and Chaos Control and MNP. And I sold that agency in, must have been the end of 2016, kind of just as the Magento 1 to Magento 2 sort of storm was really beginning to get a bit rough, I think. And we were in a situation where, in order to get ready for Magento 2, we were going to have to spend an awful lot of money to retool our code, our development and deployment infrastructure, update all our IP, retrain our guys, and because of the way that Magento was moving up market, actually get about double the size to be able to deal with the sorts of customers that were coming across to Magento. So we sold out to a company called Williams Commerce, who is in fact also a Shopware partner, although not particularly active at the moment. And then at that stage, I started doing some consulting work and then gradually got involved with Shopware.
All right.
That's a very long way of probably telling quite a short story.
Well, it doesn't matter. It gives us a good insight in your background and your experience, so that's good. And so if you now look at the current UK market, because I think also for the internationals, it's interesting to get a glimpse of what is happening on the UK market if we zoom into the e-commerce market. And
it would in general.
Yeah, and also in general, but later on, if you can zoom into positioning Shopware.
Well, I mean, in general, obviously, we're seeing a kind of a slight changing of the guard. And I'm going to talk about mid-market e-commerce because I think there are so many different, there are three main segments in e-commerce. There's the sort of, starter e-commerce, which is, startup businesses and small businesses, and that's, fantastic. There's enterprise e-commerce, which starts, with build costs in the millions, but we're really talking about mid-market e-commerce. We're seeing two main things in mid-market e-commerce. We're seeing a changing of the guard slightly, obviously, with Magento one end of life. Magento moving up market from being in such a dominant position in mid-market e-commerce in the UK to being still a very good option for certain types of customers, but actually at the higher end of mid-market rather than at the heart of mid-market.
Yeah.
I think we have certainly over the last couple of years seen the rise of Shopify with Shopify Plus into the mid-market. And of course, we've seen the rise of what actually in the UK market is our bête noire, which is BigCommerce.
Yeah.
And they're doing extremely well. They've got a very good product. It's right for an awful lot of customers. That is, I think, represents obviously the market's adoption or swing back to software as a service as perhaps the real driving force, the popular force at the moment. I think ironically, when Magento was just taking off, one of the big mid-market platforms in the UK was a software as a service platform called Vendor, which is what all the hip online brands were on.
All right.
The pendulum swung, if you like, towards Magento and open source, and now it's maybe swung back towards software as a service again.
Yeah.
And I think that shows kind of, and I always look at this in terms of a trade-off, if you like, between these two types of platform. I think that on the one hand, you've got a trade-off between simplicity on the one hand, represented almost always by software as a service, and flexibility on the other hand, represented quite more often by the open source platforms. And you can't have both. I mean, you can try, you can pretend, you really can't have both. The issue, obviously, with flexibility is that where you have flexibility, you inevitably have complexity as well. And I always like to say that complexity has an ugly sister, and that is performance issues.
Yeah.
I think that obviously, we see obviously Magento at the very, at one end of the flexibility trade-off, and the complexity and some of the sort of historic performance issues are all part and parcel of being that end of the trade-off.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think there is a difference between the UK and the other parts of the Europe? I mean, if you look at the speed of adoption or the level of understanding of the benefits of cloud solutions versus on-premise, or you think it's the same everywhere? How do you compare UK to the rest of the Europe?
I think they're very different. I mean, I think each market has its own hallmarks. I mean, I'd love to hear what you guys' opinion is. I mean, even of course from the Shopware point of view, it's extremely different. But that may be a product of actually Shopware being originally German or DACH region product, which of course now has moved, is making great headway in Benelux, but that may be part of it. But I think that even when you look at the sorts of features and functions that different territories need, and the different technology partners that they tend to adopt, that this illustrates the difference between these markets. BigCommerce and Shopify have not made the same strides in Germany, for instance, as they have in the UK. And obviously, there are different platforms that are doing well in different locations. But for me, each there are great differences between territories. Not that each territory is different, but there are marked differences between territories. And yes, I think there's also different levels of sophistication in the different markets as well. And the UK market is a very sophisticated e-commerce market.
And where would you put Shopware in that perspective?
How do you mean?
Well, if you
on the flexibility to
yeah, and also in the market segment. So do you, if you are into a pitch, are you being compared with Magento 2 or BigCommerce or
in terms of where we position ourselves?
Yeah, as Shopware.
Okay, I have a very simple answer, which I probably roll out far too often. I think that Shopware positions itself absolutely slap bang where Magento 1 used to be. And I really think that it's a part of the market that has been abandoned by, not abandoned, that Magento is less interested in than it was.
Yeah, and where customers feel neglected.
Therefore, but it's also agencies, because remember that this is the interesting thing, I think, about the difference between a software as a service company and an open source company, is that if you are running an open source platform, then your customer is in fact as much your agency as it is the merchant or retailer at the end. True. And that it's the agency you need to make successful, that you need to deliver them leads, you need to help them convert those leads, and you need to help them run efficient and successful projects. But if you are a software as a service platform, the pendulum swings much more to the merchant being your customer rather than the agency. And especially when it comes to things like support, you talk first, not to the agency, but to the platform, saying, why the hell is my site down? Or why isn't it going fast? And that fast. So I think actually that's a fairly fundamental difference between these types of platforms, the way these businesses run.
Yeah, it's a good insight. Thank you.
Yeah, and how do you see new Shopware 6? I mean, especially looking at the approach to architecture, looking on the technology stack. How is it compared, on how is what's the reaction of the UK market to this product?
The reaction is when they look at it is good. Is that the problem we have in the UK at the moment is that we don't have the awareness that the other platforms I've mentioned have in the UK yet, and that's one of the reasons why I'm working with Shopware to try and change that. Why we've got a whole lot of stuff in place to change that. I think obviously that the choices that they have made in terms of technology are all around standardization, which hopefully gives a little gives a little bit more simplicity to the flexibility, if you like. So the choice of Symfony and unadulterated full stack Symfony, not a customized framework, is an important one. The choice of Vue.js is an important one. The choice of Twig is an important one. And I think these are once developers look at this platform, they're normally impressed both by the architecture and by the code quality.
Yeah, very much.
That is not to say that Shopware 6 is the finished article. It's actually beginning to be the finished article, but there are specific developments, both local and in general, that have to happen, and both to the product itself, which there are still, we're still it's still being perfected, and I think in the next couple of months you're going to see some real strides forward, and in the technology and partner ecosystem that sits around it, which is massively important. So it's everything's been very encouraging so far, but there's more work to be done. We know there's more work to be done, and in fact, one of the things we're putting in place is methodologies to help the community communicate to us efficiently what is needed, what makes the difference, and where necessary, communicate back to the community how they can contribute in both a useful and a potentially profitable way for them as well.
Yeah. And looking at Shopware's pricing model, and because we from the Netherlands, and I think even more from Poland, if you look at an average project price or also an hourly rate for let's say a developer, there are let's say UK market is in most cases priced much higher. Logically, any project would be quoted higher as well. And how does the Shopware pricing level compares itself to the market? Because they're used to maybe Magento 2 licensing, Salesforce licensing, maybe commerce tools. Is Shopware maybe found too cheap for the market? That the boardroom doesn't say it's so cheap it can be good.
That is. I'm not going to pretend that I don't think that some of our editions should be priced higher. I think they should.
That's a fair answer.
I think our professional edition is outrageously cheap, and
I agree.
And if I had the power, I would double its, in fact, probably quadruple its price overnight. I think there's two parts to this actually, and actually the reason why I've ended up working with Shopware and got ever closer to Shopware is because, as I mentioned, about a year and a half ago, I was doing a vendor selection project looking for one of my old Magento customers who I'd built the infrastructure for, and what was a 50 grand bill 4 years ago, was now ending up as a year one cost in the over 200K. So, people wouldn't pitch me, tier 2 Magento partners wouldn't pitch me open source. They couldn't offer this for less than 100 to 130 to 150 pounds.
Pounds. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So got to work out which currency we're in.
Yeah.
The 130 to 150,000 pounds, and then of course you had licensing costs on top of that.
Yeah.
So it's not only that actually that the editions that themselves are, I think, are very reasonably priced, and you may say probably too cheaply priced, especially when you compare it with.
It's perception. It's perception. Yeah.
Absolutely. There is, but actually, when it comes down to it, there are some real total cost of ownership advantages for adopting Shopware, for that, especially for that sort of certain segments of the mid-market. And there are some real feature advantages that you have with Shopware especially over Magento open source edition, that again you get for actually a lower cost of ownership, which I think is quite interesting. I've actually I don't know if you guys have seen it, and I'm happy to make it available to anyone who wants it. I put together a sort of total cost of ownership model for that compares Magento with Shopware, with BigCommerce, with Salesforce, and with Shopify Plus. Yeah. And it looks at different GMV levels, so different size of business, and it shows how that it stacks up over 4 to 5 years. So obviously for some platforms, at some levels of transaction, because some of these, BigCommerce, for instance, has a fee structure that's based on transaction bands. So obviously that penalizes people who have low average order values and high transactions against high average order values and low transactions. So it helps to give you an idea of where we sit. And the interesting thing is that in most cases, well, all cases really, we sit significantly lower total cost of ownership than Magento. much lower than Salesforce, but I don't think it's necessarily a fair comparison, because I think Salesforce, there's only parts of our market that Salesforce is interested in competing against. We're roughly equitable to BigCommerce, strangely enough, funnily enough.
Yeah.
And it depends on the nature of the retailer as to whether we're more cheaper or more expensive than Shopify.
Yeah.
For the smaller customers, we are a little more expensive, but for the larger customers, not so much.
Yeah.
I've seen this comparison. It's really very well done. So we can try to put the link under the podcast, or if anybody would like to get it, whatever you can hit Justin, you can hit us to get it. I have a comment because I think that was a big challenge of Shopware, that a lot of at least customers in Germany, they have been using Shopware as a kind of cloud or SaaS solution. So they were only doing plugins, some small customizations. So, an average implementation sometimes was like, 20 working hours, which for most of the agencies coming from Magento world were like, yeah, what's 20 hours? Yes, this is the time when you set up the environment, not finish the project. So then, of course, if you do 20 hours customization or, that kind of short projects, then this pricing of Shopware is really fits into this model. But if you look at much bigger, more complex projects, as you said, like 100K or something, then the price of a license that costs 1K is like, there is something wrong here. Yeah, why is it so expensive? So I think that the cloud is going to solve it. So all those small guys should move to cloud, and all the others who will stay, probably the licensing will change. That's only my prediction. So we haven't heard it from Stefan or from anyone else. It's just the prediction. But in the case of bigger agencies like we are, it would solve a lot of kind of weird discussion with the customer. Yeah? When you come to the license, and first we show low license, then we look suddenly so expensive, or otherwise it looks like weird. So are you going to rebuild this platform? So if it's so cheap, and then you have so much work to do with it. So I think it's as you mentioned, Shopware has a lot of evolution in front of it. So I think it's one of the things to do. But yeah, I think customers are having so many problems to justify and understand what are the differences between the platforms, what they can expect. So the work you've done with comparing it, I think it's very valuable for agencies, for end customers, just to show them and help them better understand the differences, and also understand the total cost of ownership. So it's really great job.
Very impressive.
Well, we hope by making this available to consultants and to agencies that we can help them place their customers on the right platform for those customers. That's the important thing here. In that most of the agencies that are our partner agencies, support more than one platform. And I think if, where possible, they should, because that enables them to offer the right solution to their customers. And this is what we're trying to do. And because we know that if that customer is put on the right solution for them, and the expectations of that customer are properly managed as part of that project, that project has a much greater chance of being successful. And that means a long-term relationship with the merchant, with our partner agency, and it means that a long-term relationship with Shopware as well. And obviously Shopware makes some money on sort of on the module side, on the extension side, as well as with revenue share agreements with some of the payment gateways as well. So we're well incentivized to make sure that we get the right sort of customers on this platform.
Yeah. And looking at the number of agencies working with Shopware in the UK market, do you see some significant rise in those numbers? Do you get more invited to come and talk and have a cup of coffee and tell your story, or say the Shopware story?
Absolutely. I mean, mind you, if it wasn't going up, then I would be for the high jump. We're bringing on new partners all the time, both agency partners and consultant partners. We have an ambassador program, which again, it's about giving consultants the information they need to go out and advise their customers and the retailers that they have, or merchants they have the ear of best. So we have that. We have both an agency partnership program, a technology group partnership program, and a consultant partnership program as well, which I hope is helping sort of to do that. We're bringing on new partners. We're certainly raising the awareness at the moment. We are beginning, and that awareness comes in with leads. That's pretty much how you manage it.
And cases, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's beginning to come. But the other issue we have, of course, is that we quite apart from all this turmoil that's going on in the world at the moment. When you bring in a new platform, it takes some time to bed it in, and it takes some time for us to win the trust of our agency partners in telling them, when it's the right time to sell to that particular types of customer. And what we found so far is that Shopware 6 has been ready for very large organizations and very small organizations. The very large ones because they're quite happy to build anything that isn't there the way they want it anyway, and they want it the way they wanted it anyway. So you know what I mean? It would have been more natural for them to build little bits of functionality anyway. And the very small ones, because actually they don't necessarily use the full features of the platform yet, and so they're quite happy to take a new, growing, evolving platform rather than one that's a little bit more mature. And it's only now that we're actually fine-tuning, I think, the functionality that you need to manage catalogs, to manage promotions, to manage customers, to manage orders properly. And that's when the sort of the heartland of the Shopware customer will start. That's when we can actually tell our agencies that now's the time that you can be successful in delivering those types of projects.
How have you seen the reaction of the like UK market agencies, the customer, after all the announcement with cloud? What's the reaction?
Well, it's been interesting. It's been really interesting because for us to be sort of the open source champions, the mainland Europe open source champions, and suddenly to release a cloud version, a software as a service version. For some agencies, this is fantastic. This is a way to attract a new customer at an earlier stage in their development. Fantastic. For others, it could be seen as a threat slightly, in that this is one of the problems for agencies, I think, adopting software as a service platforms is that those software as a service platforms eat quite a lot of their lunch. They take away the money they make on support, and quite a lot of the money they make on hosting, and they limit the money they can make on development as well.
Patching, updating. We had the discussion in one of our first podcasts, I think. Yeah.
Let's not talk about the nasty things about patching and updating. Evolving, the evolving of platforms. If you're on Shopify Plus, you're fairly limited what you can do anyway. So what you're tending to see is those type of agencies become less technical, and they tend to focus much more on digital marketing, on cross-selling digital marketing, whereas
and more on front end.
Yeah, and front end. Whereas the traditional sort of open source agency starts to think about, okay, what other technologies can I bring to bear here? How do I build this ecosystem? How can I make sure that the process of e-commerce is done more efficiently? So they tend to look much more about operations and additional technology, as well as how can I customize and refine this particular experience for this type of customer or this type of vertical.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that Shopware will manage to, on one side, be a solution as a cloud solution for the smaller one, and on the other side, sell an enterprise license for large and big companies? Because as you look at the announcement of the customers, especially of course in Germany right now, who are using Shopware, those are the top brands, the leaders of the market. Where on the other hand, you hear about some cloud solution that is going to cost some pocket money on that side, and everything is under one brand. targeting completely two different segments, completely two different customers.
I think you're right, and it's certainly going to be a challenging thing to manage at that end. But I think actually there's a really interesting difference between what Shopware is doing and what other companies are doing, and it's this: is that at the moment, when you're a retailer and you make a choice about where do I want to be on that flexibility versus simplicity trade-off, you make your choice and you burn your bridge. You're in. Once you've gone on to Shopify, there's only one way to get flexible again, and that's to get onto something else.
Yeah.
And once you've got on Magento, there's only one way to make your life simple again, and that's to get off the platform and get onto something else. You make a choice and burn your bridges. It's a kind of, it's a decision you have to make, and you're always making this decision: is do I make the choice about what I do now, or do I make a choice about what might happen in the future? And I think what Shopware have done, they've done a very essential thing, and this is the key thing. They have made it seamless to move from the SaaS version to the on-prem version, and in a slightly more limited way from the on-prem version to the SaaS version. Of course, if you've got huge, great customizations on your on-prem version, it doesn't go straight across.
Of course, yeah.
That is the limitation.
Yeah.
But this basically means that a company can say, I'm going to make this decision because it's right for me now and right for the environment, the market that I see before me, knowing that if that situation changes, or that if they made a wrong assumption, that they haven't burnt their bridges, that they don't have to completely re-platform, and that they can just move to a different type of edition. Yeah. And I think that's really powerful.
Let me try to ask this question in my best English. Because what you're saying is that, let's say we have Shopware Cloud 2-3 years from now, we will see a lot of, let's say, apps and additions to the cloud platform. And if I'm correct, all these apps need to be built on the available APIs to connect with the platform. Because
Correct.
on the on-premise solution, people actually extend core code or template code. And so it might be a good decision for plugin builders or extension builders to start working on the APIs already, because they will also be more flexible in the future to connect to the cloud platform. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, I think that, yes, they're going to have to think about, if they want to start engaging with the cloud audience, they're going to have to think about how they do that in a compliant manner, because yes, you're right. If they want to actually have extensions that can sit across both those editions, they're going to have to, in some cases, rethink how they architect their extensions. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
And what about the second big thing, which is Pwa Headless, and this top new technologies, where I think if you look at Magento is talking about Pwa Studio, and it's still there but not working. So Shopware made I believe a very, very good move with jumping in the front of the peloton with headless solution. So what do you see? What kind of reaction do you see from the customers and agencies about Pwa?
Well, it's very much the agencies at the moment who have realized how this can help their customer, and are now beginning to put together effectively the business cases that make sense to their customers for what is a slightly more expensive build. However you look at it, it's going to be certainly in the early days a more expensive build. I think Shopware made a good move in really moving quickly behind the Vue Storefront project, and I think that's really shown some good progress. We're all, one of the sorts of agencies that we're talking to in terms of partnership at the moment are quite often the ones that are trying to do headless Magento as well. So what this project also does very well is establish Shopware 6's headless credentials. And I think that's really helping the conversations with agencies.
Yeah.
Yes, we get the odd retailer that suddenly says, that really understands the value of PWA and the opportunity that headless infrastructures, and architectures can deliver them. But that's early days, and I think the important thing is that the agencies now are beginning to understand the benefits and understand that if they can, sometimes you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But if you lead the horse to that water and they drink, they will have a benefit. That's becoming clear. So it's all part of having like a modern architecture, I think, that this helps demonstrate that Shopware 6 is a modern architecture designed around API first, that can sort of give that real flexibility, and that move away from effectively the sort of the monolithic architectures of the past and all the problems that sat around those. So in terms of flexibility, in terms of of being able to evolve with changing, say, front-end technologies as they are changing every 5 years, as far as I can see, this puts us in a very good position.
Yeah, it's a good explanation. With the horses, we've been saying that headless and PWA is like teenager sex. So everybody's talking about it, but no one ever done anything about it. So it's more like, discussing when I know how to do it, this is how you should approach it and so on. But to be honest, everybody's like, shit, like how you start with it, how you do with it. So it's a very, very early stage, I think, everywhere. And all agencies, customers are trying to understand and see, the benefits. But once we'll have like a first projects, that on the other side are going to win. If you look at performance, if you look at the Google positioning and so on, then we'll immediately have like, okay, yeah, we also need it. It's an absolute must.
When the data's there that says, on average, sites with retailers that use PWA infrastructure are getting X higher conversion rates, then you can guarantee that every single retailer will want to pile in onto that bandwagon. And of course, the cost of implementing it will come massively down.
Yeah, I think
because we'll get into dominant architecture.
I think it was Patrick Friday who said in our last podcast that it was, you could at some point we could compare it to the, let's say 3, 4, 5 years ago, where we were all thinking of going responsive and doing responsive web design, and even our agency at that time said, well, we'll see, let's just do this one now on just desktop. But if you see how fast it went, that everybody just, we had to go responsive. And I think something similar could happen with PWA, of course. So we have to be very, it's called alert as an agency.
We're approaching the tipping point.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, all right. Do you have some favorite cases on the UK market which you are proud of?
I think there's a furniture business in Ireland called Cases that we're very proud of, and that was one of the really early Shopware 6 projects. That was done by Studio 49 in Ireland, and they were extremely brave. They started developing it even before the platform had been formally released. I think that's put them in a really good position as to really understanding how to get how to do Shopware 6 projects efficiently. Like all these things, the first project, as you build your suite of tools and IP that help you deliver great projects. The first couple will always be a bit painful, and when you're that early, that must have been, I think that was quite painful. But I think they did a great job. They stuck at it. I think we like to think we helped them out as much as we possibly could, and I think that's actually another of the important sides, aspects to actually working with Shopware. I think is that I think we can I think it'd be hard for any other platforms to argue that they give better agency and retailer support in builds. And I think that's it's a key part of the Shopware offering that actually, I hate to say go down the magenta route, but that actually you can get support from the platform.
Oh yeah, that's true. I can say it from my perspective. It is like that. We've been a Magento agency for years, but we never got to the enterprise level in the Dutch market, so we got nothing. No leads, no support, no.
Well, we were a fairly senior partner in the UK, and we certainly got no support. We got leads occasionally, but we certainly got no real support. And I think that the irony, of course, is that what is still so strong, and of course at Shopware that we envy so much, so strong about Magento, is the Magento community. And that community came together because they got so little support from Magento, because the platform was so poorly documented in the early days that actually there's the only way we could actually deliver projects efficiently. And the irony is,
it's a very risky statement. It's a very risky statement because Shopware can come to the conclusion, so let's not support them, and they will build a great community then.
That is not what the plan is. Right. But it's a horrible irony, isn't it? That's the way it came to. That's the way that the great community, the still great community around Magento, came about and became so strong, became so well integrated, and we envy that. We've got to, we're looking, of course, when we look at the UK, we looked at the way that Magento did things in 2010. Especially 2010 to sort of 14, and we want to adopt some of those tactics. The way they managed to get into grassroots and engage with agencies, on a local and grassroots level was inspiring, I think.
Yeah. All right.
Sure. We're keeping our finger crossed for good legend of Shopware that is going to go around the UK about the performance, the quality, the features, and successful customers, because that's the clue. The legend is going to attract more customers, more agencies, and it's going to be bring the success.
No, I think it is, and we're actually doing quite a lot of work on the community side as well. With I think you quite often have a guest called old Wouter. And Sander and a few others are all we're all sort of thinking about ways of how we can build up the international community alongside the German community and integrate it better with the German community and give it communication channels into Shopware without violating its independence, if you like, from Shopware. So and that's, I think that'll be an important part of helping to build that all-important community aspect.
Yeah,
absolutely. Cool. Justin, we've got for you our famous 5 honest questions. So I don't know if you're ready. As usually, you haven't heard those questions, so it's before, so you don't have a chance to prepare. So the rules we ask.
What's the airspeed velocity of a laden swallow, coconut laden swallow? Is it like the bridge of death, Monty Python?
No, it's not the Monty Python. However, maybe we've got some questions related to this.
Yeah,
you're close. We ask a question. You've got 2-3 seconds to answer, and then we ask you why you selected this question. So the question would be the first question would be soccer or cricket.
It used to be soccer. It's now cricket.
What happened?
Why? And so why cricket? What happened?
I used to play quite a bit of soccer, very poorly, I might add, but play a lot of soccer. But when I stopped playing soccer, I moved into cricket, and now the game I watch and even play a bit much more is cricket. And also my kid loves cricket as well.
Right.
And there's a test match going on right now, actually, and England aren't doing very well.
A very big one.
Okay.
And Aston Martin or Lotus?
Aston Martin. More retro. Sean Connery, James Bond.
All right.
That's your style. Okay. And looking at some lands in the UK, Scotland or Ireland?
Was Scotland. I went to university in Scotland and I joined a Scottish regiment. And although the English and the Scottish have always had a long-standing love-hate relationship, we love the Scots and the Scots hate us. Scotland all the way.
Okay.
Faulty Towers or Mr. Bean?
Faulty Towers, no contest. Even the episode of the Germans, which spent a bit of time being banned over here recently.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last question, I think it's the most typical question, probably asked to the UK person, but we have to ask this question: tea or coffee?
He's hesitating.
I should say tea. I should say tea, but coffee. And the reason it's coffee. I can't exist without coffee. My wife and I, and it's because my mother-in-law, when she came to stay, she was disgusted by the coffee we had, and so she gave us one of those fancy coffee machines with the coffee pods.
Yeah.
And from that day onwards, that our lives changed, and we are now sort of coffee through and through. It's and it's got to be with the frothed milk. None of this, no cold milk in the coffee. Thank you very much. It's got to be with the hot frothed milk.
Nice.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I think that's all for today. So if you like the podcast, please share it, like it, and wait for the next episodes to come. Thank you.
That was a pleasure. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Justin. Bye bye.
Welcome to Shopware Unplugged, episode 7.